So we will start with America and how it got its name. So a lot of people think, or mainstream history teaches you, that America got its name from Amerigo Vespucci. And that is not true. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But America actually comes or gets its name from a Peruvian word called Amaru or Amaruca, and that word has many different derivatives. Or so we could start there. Go ahead.
Okay, well, it really, you're right, but another thing that it came from is from the old Egypt, right? From what they call the Sumerian god, Amaru, right? And so there's different pronunciations for Amen Raka, like we in church we say Amen, but the word is Amen, okay? Then Ra, which we know is the sun god, Ka, right? And so it's America. And we just change it over periods of time because it's, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but over time, we changed the way things are pronounced.
Well, the way the story goes is that like the European colonizers, whatever you want to call them, they couldn't pronounce some of the words, so it eventually morphed into America. But yeah, Amerigo Vespucci's real name was actually like let me see if I can find it.
I could tell a brief story, interject while Chris is looking for that, about Arizona. You guys may know where this term comes from. Beginning of the Civil War, southern New Mexico Territory was under the occupation of pro-Southern Confederates, and they declared southern half of the New Mexico Territory, which is present-day Arizona, New Mexico, to be the state of Arizona. And they took that term from the Tohono-O'odham peoples, who are in southern Arizona, northern New Mexico today, still a people, and declared that. And then basically by 1862, the Union forces ran these Confederate forces out of that area, took control. And then next year, Lincoln got Congress in 1863 to split the territory in two, the west side being the Arizona Territory, took that name, and the east side being the New Mexico Territory. And that lasted that way for half a century until they both created states. It's 1912. That's it.
Also, Suraj mentioned one of the terms for America. Also, another term we talked about it earlier, was Tamaray. And that's another way of saying the word America. All you have to do is just kind of look at the words, rearrange the words. Tamaray. We also have Al-Marak, Al-Morocco. That's kind of a later term, but that's another way of saying the Americas as well. Amurica is another one. Almarica, that's another one. So we get into the different usages and pronunciations and where the word actually comes from.
Got it. His real name was Florentine Delatante. That was his real name.
Why did he change his name?
Sorry, it took me a while to get.
Do we know why he changed his name?
Coming to a different land.
He came to a different land, and if you wanting to, you're saying that you're getting credit for discovering a place, you're gonna change your name, especially if you got the name from the indigenous people that were here. You're gonna change your name.
I don't think he ever claimed to be the one to discover America. He just gave it a name.
Whether or not he claimed it or not, it's taught in the books, in the history books, that America got its name from him.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
And so I'm just clearing that up as one of the lies in history.
I understand he was a cartographer and he was making maps, and so that's when he gave the name to this area that he didn't discover by the Europeans, but Columbus, at that point in time, into the 15th century, kind of discovery. Well, initially he thought it was India. He thought it was Indian
and it's actually
Asian continent.
It's actually thought that the Vikings actually got here long before Columbus.
That's right. Greenland and Nova Scotia.
There's a couple books on the ancient Vikings, and it's funny that wish I could think of the titles, but there's at least 3 to talk about who the Vikings really were, and they're not who people think.
They're not who
really
people
were.
think they are. But
I wanted to read this about America real quick. This is from Oriental Masonry off page 27. So America, and then it has America in the parentheses of Atlantis, because this was also known as the continent. We're talking about the Americas as the continent of Atlantis, and then the island of Atlantis is what actually sank.
So you think that that was what Plato was talking about? Okay.
But it says Atlantis. It says America, then it says Atlantis. And as the curtain which has hereunto concealed the prehistoric connection between the people of the ancient Egypt and of America is lifted, it will be seen that the people of the eagle on the Nile, being descended from the original people of the eagle on this continent, the twain are one, and that prehistoric America was the original Egypt or the Eagle Land prior to the mighty dispensation. So I just rest with that. That's from, I could go further, but that's from Oriental Masonry, page 27.
Can I ask if there's a connection? You mentioned you guys are from, is it the Morse Science Temple? Is this like a church or something? Is that what you guys are from? I just want to know, if I'm getting off topic, let me know. But I just want to see if there's a connection to that organization, and this is what Chris used, I think, to define or mention you guys are from, the organization you're from, with everything you're talking about.
No, absolutely. Some of the stuff that we've studied, you can attribute to the Moorish Science Temple, because this was one of the first organizations back in the 1920s to present that this is actually ancient Egypt. That it's not, and it goes back for, there's a lot of information that was presented through the Moorish Science Temple that is now just being confirmed by a lot of major scientists, archaeologists, you name it. Now they're saying yes, 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 yes. So some of the information we have came through the Moorish Science Temple, not all of it. So some information we found out on our own and through other means, correct.
And so in dealing with that and the names of the original Aboriginal people of this continent, what do we find? So from, I'll say both North America and South America, because from Venezuela to Peru, they called that land America Pana. So what do we find with the original Aboriginal people of both lands that has been obscured and hidden, and why do you think that is? Good.
I'll say this real quick. Now he mentioned that when Christopher Columbus came here, right, or whoever the guy, America Vespucius, I can't really pronounce his name, but he mentioned that he thought he was coming to Asia.
Mm-hmm. Right? So I call them the Indian people.
Right. Now, see, I am Asiatic, right? So he was coming to Asia because I'm Asiatic and I'm from here.
The Americas.
The Americas is Asia.
Well, it's not defined Asia by geographers. It's a different continent.
Of course,
the Western Hemisphere.
But
well, I mean,
let me just put it like this:
different continents.
If you want to bring that up, then we could say the same thing about there's Africa and Egypt and the Sudan. Egypt isn't considered part of the Sudan, but if you look on a map, Libya, Egypt, and Sudan are all connected. The only thing that divides the parts of those countries is an imaginary line.
Well, a border.
Look at this right here.
A national border. Yeah, exactly.
Border.
There's
exactly.
One of our great masters, over 100 years ago, said to us that we were Asiatics.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. And you have those people that's going to take it as a relative truth, but maybe not an absolute truth. However, when I took my DNA test, now they're saying that I'm Asian.
Okay.
I'm Southeast Asian and American at the same. How could I be both at the same time if this is not what it is? Now, how would this man over 100 years ago make that statement, and now today scientists is saying, oh yeah, he was right?
Well, I understand the current the beginning 20 years or so ago, beginning of the 21st century, they discovered the human genome. They mapped the human genome. And as what I understand is that studying the DNA well, I hate the term American Indians, but the indigenous people of the Americas who are living today do predominantly descend from Siberians who crossed over the Bering Straits and gradually populated the Americas. Now they're changing the timeline, which used to be like 15,000 years ago, they thought. Now they're finding excavations that are showing maybe 20 to 30,000 years ago those people came across. Now, Chris has talked about, some people coming over from Africa straight over, and I think you guys are claiming that Egyptians, during the time of the Egyptian civilization, not just the people from that area we know as Egypt today, but actually people from what we call the Egyptian civilization, went across the ocean and explored into the Americas. If I understand it correctly, and tell me if I'm not misunderstanding you guys.
Let me clear up that I never said that.
I'm talking about these guys. I'm talking about you.
No, but you did say that I was saying that I did say that people from Egypt have been to the Americas long before Columbus got here. That's documented in Ivan Van Sertima's book. They came before Columbus, and not only his, but Dr. Ben Johansen and Diop's Diop. I can't pronounce just Diop's name, or his first name, but in all of his books, he's documented that Africans came over here to the Americas long before Europeans ever did. That's number one. Number two is like, I've never adhered to the Bering Strait theory because it never made a whole lot of sense to me.
I think it makes perfect sense, and it's being reinforced by genetic studies.
That's up for debate. I've always, what I know of the Aboriginal people that were here, because I'm half Aboriginal, is that we've always been here. We didn't come from any other place. They've always been here. So there's that. And I'll let you guys.
Well, that's completely counter.
I'll let you guys,
well, once again,
it's completely counter to anthropological.
If we deal with what Glenn is saying about the information that's being now changed, we have to pay attention because he mentioned now they've changed the time frame. So we talked about the time earlier. It goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that they don't know. That's number one. But if you follow what he's laying out, if you go that direction with the mainstream story, he's absolutely correct. But if you set aside that and debate yourself, you're going to find out that there's a lot of missing links. And I just want to rest with this. We don't believe that the information I've seen, and it's a lot. So I don't believe anybody ever came here from. We didn't come here from anywhere else. We've always been here. So now, there's been other people that have came and left and gone, but as far as a middle passage, there's a lot of holes in that story.
Exactly.
But I do want to mention this. You had a question about the original names of the tribes. I want to make sure.
I was going in that direction. So the original names of a lot of the tribes, and let's start in the Carolinas where I'm from. So. One of the main tribes in the now is Cherokees, and then you go a little bit further down, you got Choctaws. So the original names of some of the tribes that you don't really hear about. Let's get into that.
When you talk about the word Cherokee, you're dealing with a pronunciation that, as times changed and slang changed, the name would change. So Cherokee would have been pronounced Yaraki.
By the people themselves?
Iroquois, right? Because actually the Iroquois and the Cherokee were the same people. So they would say the Iroquois, okay? Or Chiriquois. But once again, it's tough because when you get into the different pronunciations of the different languages of the actual tribes, it can become very confusing. And then you get into the ones that actually learned English, which was the King's English at the time, which that was even a different language than the English we speak today.
Right. I mentioned, I think in the previous show, I had mentioned about the story of Pocahontas. Like,
Montaoka.
That was, Pocahontas wasn't even her name.
Right. Amun Narakata. Amun Narakata.
Exactly. And so and just the whole history surrounding what happened to her, mainstream says that, it was a love story. and nothing could be further from the truth.
He was 35 years older than she was.
Exactly. And she was basically kidnapped and taken to another land. And so, in bringing up all of this, this is some of the things that I've been wanting to clear up because, I'm a serious student. I consider myself a serious student of history, and I've never kind of gone with the mainstream. I've always questioned, like you stated, it's like, hey, there's something off about this. And I think you have to have something within yourself to want to go down the routes that nobody else wants to.
It's not for everybody.
It's not. For instance, I brought this right here because this is from, the tribe. They call it the Pamunkey, from the Pamunkey tribe, which is I'm part of the Pamunkey tribe. However, when I done my real research on that, it's not Pa. It would be more like a ta, and so it would be Pamaki, right, or Tamaki, right. So that goes back again to the Moorish language, the ta, right. But over time,
Latin, ancient Latin.
Yeah, there you go. And so over time, we changed the language, and so now the people today who are calling themselves the Pamunkey, right, are not the original people from the very beginning, right? So I had to do my research on my own family, right? Now, this is saying that I'm going back to what the Powhatan clan, right? Also, which is going to take you to, Pocahontas, who they claim to be called Pocahontas, but it's going to lead you also into Lady Lulu, right? Lady Liberty, and then it's going to take you to another empress. I don't want to use the word queen because they were not queens. She was an empress, a ruler by the name of Diana, which is coming from Indiana, right?
And so you can just the word queen is
it's not a good word.
It's actually it's a derogatory.
It's derogatory.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just want to
up real quick. I think I got it.
I was just going to say, as of course, wants to wrap things up pretty soon, but in terms of the mainstream, and I brought this up, I did a presentation up in Prescott on why African American history is important. I wasn't presenting myself as an expert on it, but just why to the general population of America it's important. And the people, let's say white folk who aren't or don't know any black folk, to them it's most important that they understand this. And there's 5 different, I'm not going to go through all of that right now, but one of them is origins. And that is, according to mainstream anthropology, all of humanity descends from black people from Central Africa. That is where the Homo sapiens species originated and then moved off of the African continent throughout the globe, eventually settling into the Americas, Australia and all, and that there were several other what we call homos who before we're talking roughly, it was 120,000 years ago, they speculate, based on evidence, and then most of those people who immigrated out of Africa died off, and then there was another migration about 60,000 years ago, and then that was a successful migration of the Homo sapien across the globe, and that these other homos who they originally related to basically died off. And that, well, I'm about ready to wrap it up, Chris. But anyhow, so all of us, all of the different what we call races are basically people who look different than people from Central Africa, look different because of because of advantages of mutations that produced through evolution over time, produced people who look differently than the people from Central Africa. But that's the origins of all of humanity is Central Africa. And the point, Ben, and I'll wrap it up here, the point is that we're dealing with, in America today, with issues of racism and such. It should be obvious to people, and that if kids in school were taught that all human beings descend from black people in Central Africa, that might change their mindset.
So why are we using that term black? Because
It's just a skin color, that's all.
no, it's not. Well, it's a derogatory term. That's number one.
No, it isn't at all. I'm not making it derogatory.
Okay. But
It's just
I'm not saying that you're making it derogatory, but it is a derogatory term, because if you look up the definition of the word black, what does it say?
Represents death.
Thank you. And technically, if you really want to get into it, people of color, quote unquote, black people, they represent a wide color spectrum.
Yes.
Like from the darkest of the dark, so like Sudanese dark, right on up to fair-skinned individuals that look like yourself, and even lighter. So
Yeah.
why are we still using that term black to represent, especially when it's a fairly new term?
Okay, first of all, I'm not black. I'm Asiatic. Okay, I'm Moorish in my nature. Okay, and then I can't be from two different places. I can't be African American and at the same time.
Can't have two mothers.
Can't have two mothers.
So
Okay.
you're one or the other.
Right.
Yes.
So you're one or the other. However, if you get this book right here, The Consecrated Talisman Selimagandi, written by Prince Uriel Bey, he talks about the Born Stone that's over in Massachusetts, Cosmocomic, Cape Cod Bay, Massachusetts, right? That stone there is a landmark that tells you that this is what they call northwestern Macon, which is the farthest Africa north. However, we didn't call this Africa. This is Mesopotamia over here.
Interesting.
See?
Yeah, and the word Africa, basically, we talked about that previous. That word Africa, the far, and land afar is one of the definitions of Africa. So that could have been any place on the planet. It's just it's a reference to you being from a distant land, and then you deal with Tyrus Afri, and then you deal with the language the Berbers spoke, which was I believe it's called the Afri language that was spoken by the Berbers. So you're dealing with different usages and meanings of the word Africa. But I mean, I understand what Ken says about the importance of people understanding the history of others. I do agree with that.
I agree with
Very
that.
cool.
I agree with that as well. But my thing is that so if you're dealing with people of color, we in America, we went from how many times did the names change?
It went from black. It went from actually
or
Negro, which is a status. If you don't believe me, look up the term white Negro slaves. Negro is a status. So it went from Negro, it went from colored, right? It went from
color to black, I think.
black was, and then it went to African American.
And then
it went from people of color, which is also a status. That's something that they use.
It's changed several different times.
Only against us, though.
Yeah. Why?
Isn't that interesting?
Why? It's interesting.
Because they want to denationalize you. They want to make sure you don't have a nationality, so you can't claim your state in the Americas, which you own.
And that goes into a whole other topic that I want to cover eventually, but we don't have time right now to get into. But yeah.
Okay. So again, there's different things. Like when I mentioned that this is also known as Mesopotamia. It's also when he talked about the Texas and Arizona. When you read about the annexation of Texas, they call that Mauritania.
Who did? Who called it that?
When you got to go back to the annexation of Texas.
1845. You mean by the United States?
They mentioned that this territory out here is Mauritania.
Now we talk about Tartaria, and you look at the word Mauritania, so you see the similarities. Right. And I wanted to mention this too, as far as we talked about earlier, and I'll rest fairly quickly. We talked about the Americas. So here's some definitions of some of the states. Utah, it's a group of 4 gods with hidden arms. Missouri, Mezu-Ra is how it's pronounced. That means royal son or son of the sun god, Moses' son. Alabama, Allah Mba or Allah Mba, that's in the presence of Allah. Mississippi is Isis-Sippi or shrine of Isis, the shrine of Mesu Moses. Texas, Chichusha or Chusa, the 7 divine masters of wisdom. Iowa, Jah the Great. Minnesota, men's, first Egyptian king of the first dynasty.
Hotep.
Correct. Manhattan, Menaten. Tennessee, Tanassah, protector of Tanus. Memphis, Menfa or Menta, Kama, that's Kama in Egypt. Tallahassee, Allah will conquer. Nebraska, Lord Ra'aska, the word of God. You have Kansas, from Arabic Kansa, meaning treasure. Albany, Albani, which means the son of builders. That also refers to masons. Philadelphia was named by ancient Moors Israelites who wrote down the Septuagint for Ptolemy. So that's just a basic breakdown of some of the territories and states in America where some of the names come from.
Any final words, Glenn?
Well, thank you, guys, for coming back again. If we had some technical difficulties, we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And yeah, like Chris, there's different threads here that Chris has talked about where it'd be definitely worthwhile having you guys back to explore other areas. And
you guys want to come back and get into that?
If Radio Phoenix deems it worthy to have us return, we'll definitely return. We thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Just so you know, our brother Kaja over there would say, don't say Radio Phoenix. It is now KRDP.
KRDP.
Thank you.
If KRDP deems it worthy to have us return,
of course. Of course.
All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. We'd like to thank you guys for coming down. Join us next Monday from 4. Well, actually, we're on Tuesday now.
Mondays and Tuesdays. Actually, go to listen to KRDP.com. Things have changed a little bit. That's why we need to inform people. That's our website where you can stream our show 4 to 5 p.m. on Mondays on Indie. And then it's KRDP Jazz on Tuesday, 4 to 5 p.m. And then if you're in the far East Valley, you can even pick us up on 90.7 FM on air on Tuesdays, 4 to 5 p.m. on KRDP Jazz, and maybe that signal will get better down the road.
And then also, usually after this show airs, it'll be up on Anchor like the following day. And then you'll also be able to go to the webpage. It's down right now, but it should be up by the end of next week. I'd had some technical issues, and so you'll be able to pick up older shows by going to the webpage. It's Light Productions 0212, lightproductions.org, or it's still radiophoenix.org, and I have to change that as well. But again, thank you guys for coming down, and we will have you back again soon, I promise. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.